I'm a real estate attorney in Florida, specializing in property law and elder law. I've practiced for over 20 years, and I've seen every scheme imaginable when it comes to family members trying to take advantage of elderly parents. But the case of Eleanor Hayes stands out, not because it was the most legally complex, but because of how close it came to disaster and how one decision made 5 years earlier saved everything. Let me tell you this story from the beginning. Eleanor Hayes was 82 years old when this happened, a widow. Her husband Thomas had died 5 years earlier, and she'd been living alone ever since in the most valuable piece of property she owned, a beachfront house in Key West, Florida. This wasn't just any beach house. It was a 3-bedroom cottage with direct ocean access, built in the 1950s by Eleanor's parents. The property had been in her family for over 70 years. It sat on nearly an acre of prime waterfront land in one of the most expensive zip codes in America. The house itself was modest. Weathered blue paint, wooden deck overlooking the water, interior that hadn't been updated since the 1980s. But the land, the location, the view, that's what made it worth millions. Conservative estimates put the value at around $3.2 million, maybe more. But to Eleanor, it was priceless. This was where she'd spent summers as a child, where she'd gotten married on the beach, where she'd raised her daughter, where her husband had spent his final days watching the sunset over the water. Every room held memories, photographs on every wall, her parents' furniture, her grandmother's dishes. 60 years of family history absorbed into the walls and floors. Eleanor had one child, a daughter named Caroline, 48 years old, living in New York City. Caroline had always been what you might call financially troubled. She'd gone through 2 divorces. She'd had a series of jobs that never quite worked out. She lived in an expensive apartment she couldn't really afford and maintained a lifestyle that was always just slightly beyond her means. And for years, she'd been pressuring her mother about that beach house. "Mom, you're living alone in a house worth millions. You should sell it and move somewhere more manageable. Use the money to enjoy your retirement." That was the polite version, the version Eleanor told me about. The real version, which I'd seen in emails and text messages, was more direct. "Mom, you're sitting on a fortune and living like you're poor. Sell the house, give me half. We both deserve to enjoy that money while we're still alive." Eleanor always refused. This was her home. She had no intention of selling. I first met Eleanor about 7 years ago when her husband Thomas was dying. He'd been my client for years, and he asked me to help Eleanor with estate planning after he was gone. Thomas was a wise man. He knew his daughter. And he was worried. "David," he told me from his hospital bed, "I love my daughter, but she's not good with money. And I'm afraid when I'm gone, she's going to pressure Eleanor to sell everything and give her the proceeds. That house is Eleanor's security, her home. I need you to help protect it." We had a long conversation about options, about trusts and estate planning strategies, about how to protect assets from potential exploitation. Thomas died 3 weeks later. 2 months after his death, I sat down with Eleanor in my office to discuss her future and her estate plan. She was still grieving, still adjusting to life without Thomas. But she was also clear-headed about what she wanted. "David, Thomas told me before he died that you'd help me protect the house. Can you explain what he meant?" I pulled out a legal pad and started drawing diagrams. "Mrs. Hayes, right now you own that beach house in your name. That means you have complete control over it. But it also means anyone who gets power of attorney over you could potentially sell it. Would Caroline do that?" I chose my words carefully. "I don't know your daughter well enough to say, but Thomas was concerned, and I've seen it happen in other families. So let me suggest something. We create what's called an irrevocable living trust." What does that mean? It means we transfer ownership of the house from your name into the name of a trust. You remain the beneficiary, which means you have the right to live there for the rest of your life. You can use the house exactly as you do now, but you're no longer the legal owner. The trust is. And who controls the trust? We'd name co-trustees, people you trust completely. I'd recommend me as your attorney, and maybe your brother William in California. The 2 of us would need to agree unanimously before the house could ever be sold or transferred. Eleanor thought about this for a long time. Would Caroline be able to force me to sell if she got power of attorney? No, because you wouldn't own the property anymore. The trust would. And Caroline wouldn't have any authority over the trust. What if I change my mind? What if I want to sell? Then as long as both trustees agree that it's your genuine wish and you have capacity to make that decision, we could facilitate a sale. But it would require both of us to sign off, so it protects you from being pressured or coerced. Thomas really thought this was necessary? He did. And from what you've told me about the pressure you're already getting from Caroline, I think he was right. Eleanor nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. Set up the trust. Protect my home. Over the next month, we did exactly that. We created the Hayes Family Trust. We transferred the deed from Eleanor Hayes individually to the Hayes Family Trust. We named me and William Hayes as co-trustees. Eleanor retained complete right to live in the house. She could renovate it, rent it out if she wanted, do anything except sell or transfer it without trustee approval. The paperwork was filed, the deed was recorded, the trust was established, and then, for 5 years, everything was quiet. Eleanor lived peacefully in her beach house. She gardened, she swam, she had friends over for dinner. She watched the sunset every evening from her deck. Caroline visited maybe once a year. The visits were always tense. There were always comments about the house, about how Eleanor should sell, about how much money was just sitting there unused. But Eleanor held firm, and Caroline couldn't do anything about it. Until about 6 months ago, when things started to change, Caroline's visits became more frequent. She'd show up unannounced, claiming she was just worried about Mom living alone. She started asking Eleanor to sign various documents. Just updating your medical directives, Mom. Just making sure your will is current. Just giving me power of attorney in case something happens. Eleanor, to her credit, didn't sign anything without calling me first. Every time Caroline pushed a document in front of her, Eleanor would say, "I need to have my lawyer review this." That would make Caroline angry. "Mom, don't you trust me? I'm your daughter. Why do you need a lawyer to look at simple documents?" But Eleanor stuck to her guns. Then, about 3 months ago, Eleanor called me with concern in her voice. "David, Caroline called today. She says she's coming to visit next weekend. She says she wants to help me organize some paperwork. Should I be worried?" "Has she said specifically what paperwork?" "No, just that she wants to help me get things in order." "Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to give you the same advice I always give. Do not sign anything while Caroline is there, not a single document. If she brings anything that needs your signature, tell her you need me to review it first. Can you do that?" "Yes. And call me if anything feels wrong. I don't care what time it is. Call me." "Okay, thank you, David." That weekend came and went. I didn't hear from Eleanor, which I took as a good sign, but 2 days later, on a Tuesday morning, my phone rang. Eleanor's number. I answered. "Mrs. Hayes?" She was crying, actually sobbing on the phone. "David, I need your help. Something terrible has happened." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm not hurt. It's Caroline. She did something. I don't even know how. But David, she says she sold my house." I felt ice run through my veins. "She what?" "Caroline was here over the weekend. She kept pushing papers at me. Medical forms, she said. I was tired. I have a cold. I just wanted her to leave me alone. I might have signed something. I don't remember clearly. I was feeling so foggy." "Okay, slow down. When did she say this?" "She just called me, an hour ago. She said, 'Mom, I sold the beach house. I found a buyer who's paying cash. We close on Friday. I'm coming tomorrow with a moving company to pack your things. We need to get you into a senior facility.'" Eleanor's voice broke completely. "David, she sold my home. How could she do that? This is my home." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm even though I was furious. "Mrs. Hayes, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Caroline did not sell your house. She cannot sell your house. Do you remember when we set up the trust 5 years ago?" "The trust, yes, I remember." "You don't own that house. The trust owns it. And I'm the trustee along with your brother William. Caroline has no authority to sell property owned by a trust. None. Whatever she thinks she did, it's not valid. There was a long silence on the other end. Are you sure? Absolutely sure. Even if she somehow got you to sign a power of attorney, which it sounds like she might have tricked you into, that power of attorney only gives her authority over property you personally own. You don't own the beach house. The trust does. I could hear Eleanor starting to breathe easier. So she can't take my home? She cannot take your home. But we need to act quickly. If she's told a buyer and a real estate agent that she has authority to sell, we need to shut that down immediately before it goes any further. What do we do? First, I'm going to make some calls. I need to find out if there actually is a buyer and an agent involved. If there is, I'll contact them directly and explain the situation. Second, when Caroline shows up tomorrow, I'm going to be there. You'll come here? Yes. I'll be at your house when she arrives. We're going to stop this before it goes any further. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. After I hung up, I immediately started making calls. I called the clerk's office in Monroe County to see if any paperwork had been filed regarding the property. Nothing yet. I called several real estate agencies in Key West to see if anyone was aware of a pending sale on Eleanor's address. On my fourth call, I hit pay dirt. Oh yes, the receptionist said. That's Martha's listing. Let me transfer you. Martha Connolly came on the line. She was a veteran real estate agent, professional and polite. This is Martha. How can I help you? Miss Connolly, my name is David Reeves. I'm an attorney and I'm calling about the property at 428 Sunset Drive in Key West. I understand you believe you have a listing on that property? Yes, we're closing Friday. Is there a problem? I'm afraid there is. A significant problem. Who retained you to sell this property? Caroline Hayes. She has power of attorney for her mother, Eleanor Hayes, who owns the property. I see. And did you verify the chain of title before accepting this listing? There was a pause. Well, Caroline provided documentation. Did you pull a title report? Another pause, longer this time. Not yet. We were going to order it as part of the closing process. Miss Connolly, I'm one of the trustees of the Hayes Family Trust, which is the actual legal owner of that property. Eleanor Hayes is not the owner. The trust is. Caroline Hayes has no authority whatsoever to sell that property. Any sale you've arranged is void. I could hear papers rustling. Let me look at the deed Caroline gave me. More rustling. Oh my God. This deed is from 2018. It shows Eleanor Hayes as owner. But you're saying that changed? It changed 5 years ago when the property was transferred into an irrevocable trust. If you pull current title, you'll see the Hayes Family Trust is the owner of record. I'm emailing you documentation right now. I sent her copies of the trust documents and the recorded deed. There was a long silence while she reviewed them. Mr. Reeves, I am so sorry. Caroline represented that she had full authority. She showed me power of attorney documents. She said her mother had agreed to the sale. I had no idea. I understand you were misled, but there is no valid sale. There cannot be a valid sale without authorization from both trustees, and I am telling you right now, as one of those trustees, that no such authorization exists or will be given. What about the buyer? They've put down earnest money. You need to return it immediately and explain that the seller did not have authority. This is a mess, but it's one that Caroline created, not you. However, if you proceed with this sale knowing that the seller lacks authority, you could be liable. No, we'll cancel immediately. I'll call the buyer's agent right now. Mr. Reeves, thank you for bringing this to my attention before we got to closing. You're welcome. And Ms. Connolly, I'd recommend you be very careful about accepting power of attorney documents in the future without thoroughly verifying the chain of title. Absolutely. Lesson learned. I hung up feeling slightly better. At least the real estate transaction was shut down, but I was still furious about what Caroline had tried to do. The next morning, I drove to Eleanor's beach house. It was a beautiful drive down the Keys, though I was too angry to enjoy it. I arrived at 9 in the morning. Eleanor let me in. She looked tired and stressed, but also relieved to see me. Caroline said she'd be here at 10 with a moving truck, Eleanor said. Then we'll be ready for her. We sat on the porch and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, a large moving truck pulled up, followed by Caroline's rental car. Caroline got out. She was a tall woman, well dressed in expensive clothes that probably represented more than she could afford. She saw me sitting on the porch and her face registered confusion and then anger. "Who are you?" she called out. I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. "My name is David Reeves. I'm Eleanor's attorney, and I'm one of the trustees of the Hayes Family Trust, which owns this property." Caroline's face went pale. Just for a second. Then she recovered. "I have power of attorney. I have the right to manage my mother's affairs." Power of attorney gives you authority over property that your mother owns personally. This house is not owned by your mother. It's owned by a trust. A trust that was established 5 years ago specifically to prevent what you're trying to do right now. That's ridiculous. My mother owns this house. I pulled out my phone and showed her the recorded deed. This is the current deed on file with Monroe County. Owner of record, Hayes Family Trust. Trustees, David Reeves and William Hayes. Your mother is the beneficiary with lifetime residence rights, but she is not the owner. I could see Caroline's mind racing, trying to figure out a new angle. "Well, I spoke to a real estate agent. We have a buyer. We're closing on Friday." "I spoke to Martha Connolly yesterday. She's canceled the sale. She was very apologetic about the misunderstanding. There is no closing on Friday." Caroline's face turned red. "You had no right to interfere." "I had every right. I'm the trustee. Protecting this property is literally my job." The moving truck driver had gotten out and was listening to this exchange. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am," he called to Caroline, "are we moving anything today or not?" Caroline ignored him and turned to her mother. "Mom, tell him. Tell him you want to sell the house. Tell him you asked me to arrange this." Eleanor, who had been silent until now, stood up. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I never asked you to sell my house, Caroline. This is my home. I'm not leaving." "Mom, you're 82 years old. You can't live here alone anymore. It's not safe." "I'm perfectly safe. I've lived here for 60 years. And what about the money? You're sitting on millions of dollars. You should be enjoying that money." "I am enjoying it. By living in my home." Caroline's expression turned ugly. "You're being selfish. That money should be split between us. It's family money." "It's my house," Eleanor said. "My parents left it to me. My husband and I made it our home. And I'm staying here until the day I die." I stepped in. "Ms. Hayes, I think you need to leave now. Your mother has made her wishes clear. There will be no sale. There will be no moving. And if you continue to harass your mother or attempt to execute any transactions regarding this property, I will pursue legal action against you for attempted fraud." "Fraud? You're accusing me of fraud. You attempted to sell property you don't own and have no authority over. You misrepresented your authority to a real estate agent. You put a buyer's money at risk. Yes, those could constitute fraud." Caroline looked at her mother one more time. "You'll regret this, Mom. When you're sick and alone and need help, don't come crying to me." "I won't," Eleanor said quietly. Caroline stormed to her rental car and drove off. The moving truck driver looked relieved. "So we're not moving anything?" he confirmed. "No," I said. "Sorry you had to drive out here for nothing." He shrugged. "Happens more than you'd think. Family stuff is always complicated." He got back in his truck and left. Eleanor and I stood on the porch in silence for a moment. "Is it really over?" she asked. "The immediate crisis is over, but we should talk about next steps." We went inside. I made us both coffee and we sat at her kitchen table overlooking the ocean. "Mrs. Hayes, we need to consider whether Caroline might try something else. The power of attorney she has is a problem. Do you remember signing it?" "I think so, over the weekend. She said it was just medical directives." "Do you have a copy?" "No, she took all the papers with her." "Okay. We need to formally revoke any power of attorney you may have signed. I'll draft a revocation document and we'll record it with the county. That will ensure Caroline can't use it to cause mischief with your bank accounts or other assets. What about the house? Can she try again? Not successfully. The trust protects the house completely. Even if she got a court to declare you incompetent, which she won't because you're clearly competent, she still couldn't touch property owned by the trust. Eleanor looked out at the water. David, when Thomas set this up, I thought maybe he was being paranoid. I thought, surely Caroline wouldn't really try to take my home. But he knew. He knew exactly what she'd try to do. Thomas was a wise man. He loved you and wanted you protected. I can't believe my own daughter would do this. Try to throw me out of my home so she could get the money. It was a heartbreak I'd seen many times before. The realization that a child values inheritance over their parents' well-being. I'm sorry you're going through this. What do I do now? She's my only child. That's not a legal question. That's a personal decision only you can make. Eleanor was quiet for a long time. I think I need some distance from her. For now, at least. That's understandable. Over the next week, we did the paperwork. We formally revoked any powers of attorney. We sent Caroline a cease and desist letter, warning her that any further attempts to interfere with her mother's property or finances would result in legal action. Caroline didn't respond, but she also didn't try anything else. Eleanor changed her will. Not to punish Caroline, she said, but to be realistic. The beach house would pass to Eleanor's grandchildren through the trust when Eleanor died. Caroline would receive some personal property and a modest cash bequest, but not the house. She already tried to take it from me while I'm alive, Eleanor explained. I can't trust her to inherit it when I'm gone. 6 months have passed since the confrontation on the porch. Eleanor is still living peacefully in her beach house. She's thriving, actually. Without the stress of Caroline's constant pressure, she seems years younger. Caroline has attempted to contact her mother twice. Both times, Eleanor declined to see her. Maybe someday, Eleanor told me, but not yet. The betrayal is too fresh. I think about this case often, about how close it came to disaster. If we hadn't set up that trust 5 years earlier, Caroline might have succeeded. She might have sold the house out from under her mother. By the time we got it straightened out in court, Eleanor would have been homeless and traumatized. But we'd planned ahead. We'd protected the assets before the crisis hit, and that made all the difference. This is why I do elder law. Not because I enjoy family conflict, but because sometimes protecting an elderly person's home and security requires planning for the worst, even when we hope for the best. Thomas Hayes knew his daughter. He knew what she was capable of, and he made sure his wife would be protected. That's love. That's real love. Protecting someone not just in the moment, but for years into the future. Planning for dangers they can't even imagine yet. Eleanor calls me every few weeks now, usually just to chat and thank me again. She started painting watercolors of the ocean view from her porch. She's joined a book club. She's living her best life in the home she loves. And Caroline can't touch it. That's justice. That's what estate planning is supposed to accomplish. Not just distributing assets after death, but protecting people during life, giving them security and peace, allowing them to age with dignity in the homes they love. Eleanor will live in that beach house until the day she dies, and she'll die knowing it's protected, that her grandchildren will inherit it, that Caroline's greed didn't win. Sometimes, that's the best outcome we can hope for. 3 months after the confrontation at Eleanor's beach house, I thought the case was over. Caroline had disappeared back to New York. Eleanor was living peacefully. The trust was doing its job. I was wrong. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got a call from Eleanor. Her voice had that tremor I'd learned to recognize. Something was wrong. David, I got a letter today from a law firm in Miami. They're representing Caroline. They're saying the trust is invalid. My blood ran cold. What exactly does the letter say? It says that the trust was created when I was under undue influence, that I didn't understand what I was signing, that my husband Thomas manipulated me into transferring the house, and that Caroline is going to court to have the trust declared void and the house returned to my name. I felt anger rising in my chest. Mrs. Hayes, I need you to scan that letter and email it to me immediately. Then I want you to take a deep breath. This is a legal tactic. It's going to fail, but we need to respond properly. David, can they really do this? Can they take away the trust? They can try, but they won't succeed. The trust was properly executed 5 years ago. You had full capacity. Thomas didn't manipulate you, he protected you. We have documentation of everything. This is a desperate move by Caroline, and it's going to backfire on her. I hung up and waited for the email. When it came through, I read the letter carefully. It was from a firm called Sanderson and Mitchell, a mid-sized litigation firm in Miami. The attorney who signed the letter was named Robert Sanderson. I'd heard of him. He had a reputation for taking aggressive, sometimes questionable cases. The letter laid out Caroline's position. The trust created 5 years ago was invalid because Eleanor had been grieving her husband's death and was not in a proper mental state to make such a significant decision. Thomas, according to the letter, had pressured Eleanor into signing over her most valuable asset to prevent Caroline from inheriting it. The trust was therefore the product of undue influence and should be set aside. If successful, the house would revert to Eleanor's personal ownership, and then Caroline, as power of attorney holder, could proceed with the sale. It was clever. Wrong, but clever. I immediately called Eleanor's brother William in California. As co-trustee, he needed to know what was happening. Will, this is David Reeves. We have a situation. I explained everything. William listened quietly until I finished. So Caroline is claiming Eleanor wasn't competent to create the trust? That's absurd. I was there when she signed the documents. She asked intelligent questions. She understood exactly what she was doing. You were there? Yes, I flew out specifically for the signing. Thomas asked me to be there as a witness. He wanted family present to make it clear this was Eleanor's choice. This was excellent news. I'd forgotten William had been present. Will, I'm going to need you to testify to that if this goes to court. Absolutely, whatever Eleanor needs. My niece has lost her mind if she thinks she's going to take her mother's home. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared our response. I gathered every piece of documentation from the trust creation. The initial consultation notes, the drafts Eleanor had reviewed and commented on, the final signing ceremony where she'd asked questions and made minor changes to the language. I also scheduled Eleanor for another neuropsychological evaluation. If Caroline was going to claim her mother lacked capacity, I wanted current evidence showing she was completely competent. Dr. Patricia Morrison conducted the evaluation. 3 hours of comprehensive testing. The results were unequivocal. Eleanor Hayes, at age 82, had cognitive function well above average for her age group. No signs of dementia, confusion, or impairment of any kind. I filed our response to Caroline's petition. We denied every allegation. We presented evidence of Eleanor's capacity both then and now. We included William's sworn declaration about being present at the signing and witnessing Eleanor's clear understanding of what she was doing. And we filed a counterclaim. We accused Caroline of attempting to perpetrate a fraud on the court by making false allegations about her mother's capacity. We asked for attorney's fees and sanctions. The case was assigned to Judge Martha Kelly in Monroe County Circuit Court. I'd appeared before her several times. She was fair, thorough, and had zero patience for family members trying to exploit elderly parents. The first hearing was scheduled for early December, about 6 weeks after Caroline filed her petition. Caroline showed up with Robert Sanderson. He was in his 50s, expensive suit, slicked back hair. He had the look of a lawyer who'd seen too many courtrooms and become cynical about all of it. Eleanor, William, and I sat at our table. Eleanor looked nervous but determined. Judge Kelly reviewed the file and then looked at both sides. This is a petition to invalidate a trust that was created 5 years ago. Mr. Sanderson, you're claiming the trust was created through undue influence. That's a serious allegation. What's your evidence? Sanderson stood up. Your Honor, the trust was created mere months after Mrs. Hayes' husband passed away. She was grieving, vulnerable, and susceptible to influence. Her attorney, Mr. Reeves, and her husband had a long-standing relationship. We believe they worked together to pressure Mrs. Hayes into transferring her most valuable asset into a trust that benefits Mr. Reeves professionally and cuts out her daughter Caroline. How does the trust benefit Mr. Reeves professionally? He's named as a trustee. He collects fees for administering the trust. Judge Kelly looked at me. Mr. Reeves, do you collect trustee fees? I stood. No, Your Honor. I've never taken a penny in trustee fees. I serve as trustee pro bono as a courtesy to a longtime client. That's documented in the trust agreement itself. The judge made a note. Continue, Mr. Sanderson. Your Honor, the timing is suspicious. Mr. Hayes dies, and within months, his wife has given away her house. We believe she was not in a mental state to make that decision. Do you have any medical evidence of incapacity? We are requesting the court order an independent evaluation. She's already had one, I said, standing up, 2 weeks ago, conducted by Dr. Patricia Morrison, a board-certified neuropsychologist. I have the report here. Mrs. Hayes is completely competent. I handed copies to the judge and to Sanderson. Judge Kelly flipped through it. This evaluation shows high cognitive function, no impairment. Mr. Sanderson, your client is arguing that 5 years ago Mrs. Hayes lacked capacity. What's your evidence of that? The circumstances themselves are evidence, Your Honor. A grieving widow, pressured by her husband's attorney. Except I have a sworn declaration from Mrs. Hayes's brother, I interrupted, stating that he was present at the signing, that Mrs. Hayes asked detailed questions, that she made changes to the language before signing, that she clearly understood what she was doing. I handed that to the judge as well. Judge Kelly read William's declaration. Then she looked at Caroline, who was sitting behind her attorney. Miss Hayes, were you present when this trust was created? Caroline stood up. No, Your Honor, I was in New York. I didn't even know about it until recently. So you have no personal knowledge of your mother's mental state at the time? No, and you're claiming that your mother, who by all current evidence is completely competent, somehow lacked capacity 5 years ago? Based on what? Caroline glanced at her attorney. Sanderson jumped in. Your Honor, we'd like to depose Mrs. Hayes and her brother to explore the circumstances. I'm sure you would, but here's my problem, Mr. Sanderson. You filed a petition with very serious allegations and almost no evidence to support them. You're asking this court to invalidate a properly executed trust based solely on timing and speculation. We believe discovery will reveal. I'm not authorizing extensive discovery for a fishing expedition. If you want to challenge this trust, you need to present actual evidence of incapacity or undue influence. Do you have any medical records from 5 years ago showing cognitive impairment? No, Your Honor, but do you have any witnesses who observed Mrs. Hayes being confused or manipulated? Her daughter believes her daughter's belief is not evidence, especially when that daughter has a clear financial motive to invalidate the trust. Judge Kelly closed the file. Mr. Sanderson, I'm dismissing this petition. You failed to present a prima facie case. The trust stands. Your Honor, we request the opportunity to amend. Request denied. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. That means Ms. Caroline Hayes cannot refile on the same grounds. The trust is valid. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes is competent, and this court will not be used as a tool for adult children trying to get their hands on their parents' assets. She banged her gavel. Caroline looked stunned. Sanderson looked irritated but not surprised. I suspected he'd known this was a long shot from the beginning. Outside the courtroom, Eleanor was crying, but these were tears of relief. It's really over? She asked. This part is over, but Caroline may try other things. We need to be prepared. William put his arm around his sister. Ellie, you need to consider cutting her off completely. Change your will. Make it clear she gets nothing if she keeps this up. She's my daughter, Will. She just tried to have you declared incompetent so she could sell your house. She's not acting like your daughter. She's acting like a predator. Eleanor looked at me. David, what do you think? I think your brother has a point. I think you need to protect yourself. That doesn't mean you can't ever reconcile with Caroline, but it does mean setting very clear boundaries and consequences. Over the next month, we revised Eleanor's estate plan completely. The beach house remained in the trust, to pass to Eleanor's 3 grandchildren equally after her death. Caroline would inherit some personal property and a cash bequest of $50,000, but nothing else. The will included an explicit statement. I am limiting my daughter Caroline's inheritance due to her repeated attempts to take control of my assets during my lifetime, including her attempt to sell my home without authority and her baseless legal challenge to my trust. This decision is made with full mental capacity and clear understanding. It was harsh, but it was necessary. We also did something else. We created a detailed timeline and documentation of everything Caroline had done. The attempted sale, the forged power of attorney, the fraudulent petition to invalidate the trust. All of it compiled into a single file. Why are we documenting all this? Eleanor asked. Because I want to be prepared if Caroline tries anything else. And I want to have everything ready if we need to pursue a restraining order or criminal charges. Criminal charges? Against my daughter? Mrs. Hayes, what Caroline did with the attempted sale could be prosecuted as fraud or attempted grand theft. The forged power of attorney could be forgery. I'm not saying we should pursue charges, but I want you to know you have options if she escalates. Eleanor looked horrified at the thought, but she nodded. 3 weeks after the court hearing, Caroline tried again. This time she contacted Adult Protective Services in Monroe County. She filed a complaint alleging that her mother was being financially exploited by her attorney, me. She claimed I had isolated Eleanor from family, taken control of her assets, and was preventing her from seeing her daughter. An APS investigator named Jennifer Torres called me. Mr. Reeves, I have a complaint here about Eleanor Hayes. Her daughter is alleging exploitation. I need to conduct a home visit. Of course. When would you like to visit? How about tomorrow morning? That works. I'll let Mrs. Hayes know you're coming. And, Ms. Torres, I should tell you that this is not the first time Caroline has made false allegations. She recently tried to sell her mother's house without authority and filed a frivolous lawsuit to invalidate a trust. This is part of a pattern of harassment. I see. Well, I still need to investigate any complaint we receive. I understand. We'll cooperate fully. The next morning, Jennifer Torres arrived at Eleanor's beach house. She was in her 30s, professional, with a kind but observant manner. I was there with Eleanor. Torres interviewed Eleanor privately first, then asked to speak with both of us together. Mrs. Hayes, Torres began, your daughter says you're being isolated, that you're not allowed to see her or talk to her. Is that true? Eleanor sighed. My daughter tried to sell my house without my permission. She filed a lawsuit claiming I was mentally incompetent. I've chosen not to see her because I don't feel safe around her. But that's my choice, not David's. Do you feel Mr. Reeves has inappropriate control over your finances? No. David is one of the trustees of the trust that owns my house. That's a role my late husband asked him to fill. David has never taken any money for himself. He's only protected me. Torres made notes. And you're happy with your living situation? You feel safe? I love my home. I've lived here for 60 years. I'm perfectly safe and happy. Torres asked more questions. About Eleanor's daily routine, her friends, her health, her finances. Eleanor answered everything clearly and confidently. Finally, Torres closed her notebook. Mrs. Hayes, I don't see any evidence of exploitation or abuse. You're clearly competent in making your own decisions. I'm going to close this case as unfounded. What about Caroline? I asked. What happens when someone files a false report? If it's determined to be malicious, there can be consequences, but that's hard to prove. Usually we just document it in case there are future reports. After Torres left, Eleanor looked exhausted. How many times is she going to do this? How many ways is she going to try? Until she either succeeds or realizes it's not going to work, I said. That's why we need to stay vigilant. But I was worried. Caroline was becoming more desperate and more creative. Each failed attempt seemed to push her to try something else. I called a meeting with Eleanor and William. "We need to consider our options," I said. "Caroline is engaging in a pattern of harassment. She's filed false legal claims. She's made false reports to protective services. This is only going to continue unless we take stronger action." "What kind of action?" William asked. "We could seek a restraining order. We could also refer the matter to the state attorney for possible criminal prosecution. The attempted fraud with the house sale is prosecutable." Eleanor looked pained. "I don't want my daughter arrested. I understand, but we need her to stop. And right now, there are no consequences for her actions. She tries something, it fails, she tries something else. We need to make it clear there will be real consequences if she continues." We debated for over an hour. Finally, Eleanor made a decision. "Let's get the restraining order, but hold off on criminal prosecution unless she does something else. I want her to have one more chance to stop on her own." We filed for a restraining order the next week. The petition laid out everything Caroline had done: the attempted sale, the fraudulent trust challenge, the false APS report. We asked the court to order Caroline to stay at least 500 feet away from Eleanor and to cease all contact except through attorneys. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Caroline showed up without an attorney this time. Apparently, Sanderson had dropped her as a client after the trust case was dismissed. She looked different, tired, stressed. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced with something more modest. I wondered if she was running out of money. Judge Thomas Chen presided over the restraining order hearing. He reviewed the petition and the evidence. "Ms. Hayes, you've engaged in a pattern of behavior that's clearly harassing your mother, attempting to sell her house, filing frivolous lawsuits, making false reports to protective services. Why should I not grant this restraining order?" Caroline stood up. Her voice was shaky. "Your Honor, I'm just trying to look out for my mother. She's 82 years old, living alone in a house worth millions. I'm worried about her. Every time I try to help, her attorney blocks me." "By help, you mean sell her house out from under her?" "The house is too much for her to manage. She should be in a facility where she's safe and cared for." "Has your mother asked to go into a facility?" "No, but—" "Has she expressed any desire to sell her house?" "No, but she's not thinking clearly." "Miss Hayes, I've reviewed the neuropsychological evaluation. Your mother is thinking perfectly clearly, clearer than many people half her age. What she's not doing is agreeing with what you want, and that's her right." Judge Chen signed the restraining order. "You are ordered to stay at least 500 feet from your mother. You are not to contact her in any way except through written communication via attorneys. You are not to file any further legal actions regarding her property or her capacity without leave of this court. Violation of this order will result in arrest." "Do you understand?" Caroline's face crumpled. "You're keeping me from my own mother." "No, your own behavior is keeping you from your mother. If you want a relationship with her, you need to respect her choices and stop trying to steal her assets." He banged the gavel. As we left the courtroom, Eleanor looked sad but also relieved. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said. "I know, but it was necessary." "Do you think she'll stop now?" "I hope so, but we'll keep monitoring." For the next 3 months, there was silence. No contact from Caroline, no new legal filings, no reports to agencies. Eleanor started to relax. She planted a new garden. She took up painting. She had friends over regularly. She seemed lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. I started to think maybe, finally, Caroline had given up. Then one day, I got a call from William in California. "David, Caroline contacted me. She wants me to convince Eleanor to sell the house and split the proceeds with her. She says she's in financial trouble. Her apartment is being foreclosed on. She's desperate." "What did you tell her?" "I told her absolutely not, that she brought this on herself, that she needs to leave her mother alone." "How did she react?" "She started crying, saying she's going to be homeless, that she has no one to turn to. It was actually sad. But I can't forget that she tried to throw her own mother into the street to get money. Desperate people do desperate things, David. I'm worried about what she might try next." His worry was justified. 2 weeks later, Eleanor called me at 11 o'clock at night. "David, there's someone trying to break into my house." I could hear fear in her voice, and in the background, the sound of someone rattling a door. "Have you called 911? "Yes, they're on their way, but David, I think it's Caroline." My heart sank. "Stay on the phone with me. Go to your bedroom and lock the door. The police will be there soon." I stayed on the line with Eleanor, hearing her frightened breathing, until I heard sirens in the background. "The police are here," she said. "I'm going to hang up. Call me back as soon as you know what happened." 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Eleanor, but I could hear a police officer in the background. "David, it was Caroline. She was trying to get in through the back door. The police arrested her." "Are you okay?" "I'm scared, but I'm okay. I'll be there first thing in the morning." I hung up and immediately called William. Then I sent an email to the state attorney's office, attaching all our documentation of Caroline's pattern of behavior, and noting that she had now violated a restraining order and attempted to break into her mother's home. This had gone far enough. The next morning, I drove to Key West. Eleanor looked like she hadn't slept. There was a police report from the night before. Caroline had been arrested for violating the restraining order and for attempted burglary. She was being held on $25,000 bail. "What happens now?" Eleanor asked. "Now the state attorney decides whether to prosecute. Based on everything Caroline's done, I think they will." "Will she go to jail?" "Possibly. That depends on a lot of factors." "But Eleanor, she broke into your house, or tried to. That's a serious crime." Eleanor started crying. "She's my daughter. I don't want her in jail." "I know. But you also deserve to be safe in your own home." Over the next several weeks, the criminal case moved forward. Caroline was charged with violating the restraining order and attempted burglary. She pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor, a woman named Lisa Rodriguez, called me to discuss the case. "Mr. Reeves, I've reviewed everything you sent. This is a clear pattern of escalating behavior. The defendant has tried everything short of physical violence to get access to her mother's assets. I want to prosecute this to the fullest extent. What kind of sentence are we looking at? Violation of a restraining order is a misdemeanor, but attempted burglary is a third-degree felony. She could get up to 5 years. Mrs. Hayes doesn't want her daughter in prison. I understand, but Mrs. Hayes also deserves to feel safe, and we need to send a message that this kind of elder exploitation won't be tolerated." The case went to trial 4 months later. Caroline had a public defender, a young man who looked overwhelmed. The evidence was presented: the attempted sale, the fraudulent trust challenge, the false APS report, the restraining order, and finally, the attempted break-in. The prosecutor argued that this was a pattern of escalating behavior driven by greed, that Caroline Hayes had repeatedly tried to take her mother's property through legal and illegal means, that she had shown no remorse and no willingness to stop. The defense argued that Caroline was desperate, not criminal, that she was struggling financially and had made poor decisions but didn't deserve a felony conviction. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on both counts. Caroline sat motionless as the verdict was read. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Eleanor didn't attend the trial. She couldn't bear to watch her daughter be prosecuted, but she did write a letter to the judge to be considered at sentencing. In it, she expressed sadness about the situation. She said she loved her daughter but couldn't condone her behavior. She asked for mercy but also for protection. She wanted Caroline to get help but also wanted to feel safe in her own home. At sentencing, Judge Chen read Eleanor's letter aloud. Then he looked at Caroline. "Miss Hayes, you have systematically tried to exploit your elderly mother. You've lied. You filed false legal claims. You've made false reports to authorities. And when all of that failed, you tried to break into her home. This behavior is reprehensible." He paused. "However, I've read your mother's letter, and despite everything you've done, she still loves you. She still hopes you'll get help and turn your life around. I'm going to honor her wishes for mercy, but make no mistake, you are getting a significant sentence." He sentenced Caroline to 3 years of probation, 6 months of house arrest with electronic monitoring, 200 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling for addiction to financial manipulation. She was also ordered to pay restitution for all of Eleanor's attorney's fees. If she violated probation in any way, she would serve 5 years in prison. Caroline broke down crying as the sentence was read. After the sentencing, I met with Eleanor to update her. "She's not going to prison?" Eleanor asked. "Not unless she violates probation. She'll be on house arrest for 6 months, then closely monitored for 3 years. And she has to stay away from me?" "Yes. The restraining order remains in effect, and any violation means she goes to prison immediately." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I hope this helps her. I hope she gets the help she needs." "So do I." That was 8 months ago. As far as I know, Caroline has complied with all the terms of her probation. She's still in New York. She hasn't contacted Eleanor. Eleanor continues to live peacefully in her beach house. She's 83 now, still painting, still gardening, still watching the sunset every evening from her deck. The house is safe. The trust is secure. Eleanor is protected. And that's all I ever wanted to accomplish. 2 years after the criminal trial, I sat in my office reflecting on the Eleanor Hayes case. It had consumed so much of my professional life and taught me so much about the darker side of family dynamics. I'd kept in touch with Eleanor. She called me every few weeks, usually just to chat about her garden or a book she'd read. She seemed content, at peace. The constant stress and fear that had characterized her life during Caroline's campaign of harassment was gone. But I knew the cost. Eleanor rarely mentioned Caroline. When she did, it was with a sadness that never quite went away. She loved her daughter, but she couldn't trust her. And that grief, that loss of the relationship she'd hoped to have, was something no legal victory could fix. One afternoon, Eleanor called with news. "David, I got a letter from Caroline today." I felt my stomach tighten. What did it say? "It came through her probation officer, so it's official and allowed. She's asking if we can meet. She says she's been in therapy, that she understands now what she did wrong. She wants to apologize and try to rebuild our relationship." "How do you feel about that?" Long silence. "I don't know. Part of me wants to see her. She's my daughter. I miss her, despite everything. But I'm also scared. What if this is just another manipulation?" "That's a legitimate concern. If you decide to meet with her, I'd recommend doing it in a public place with witnesses present. And I'd recommend not making any decisions about changing your estate plan or the trust until you've had time to see if her changed behavior is genuine and lasting." "Would you come with me, if I meet her?" "If that would make you feel more comfortable, absolutely." We arranged a meeting for 2 weeks later at a restaurant in Key West. Neutral territory, public place. I would be there, along with Caroline's probation officer, who was required to supervise any contact between them due to the restraining order. The day of the meeting, Eleanor was nervous. She changed outfits 3 times. She kept asking me if she was doing the right thing. "There's no right or wrong here," I told her. "This is about what you need. If at any point you want to leave, we leave." We arrived at the restaurant first. Caroline came in a few minutes later, accompanied by her probation officer, a stern-looking woman named Patricia Coleman. Caroline looked different. She'd lost weight. Her hair was simpler. Her clothes were modest, not designer. She looked tired, but also somehow more genuine than I'd ever seen her. She sat down across from her mother. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Caroline spoke. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. I was horrible to you. I tried to take your home. I put you through hell. And I did it all because I was selfish and desperate and thought I deserved your money more than you deserved your home." Eleanor reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "Why, Caroline? Why did you do it?" Caroline's eyes filled with tears. I've been talking about this a lot in therapy. I think I always felt like I was competing for your attention and approval. With the house. That sounds crazy, I know, but you loved that house so much. It represented your parents, your life with Dad, your whole history. And I felt like I was never as important as that house. She wiped her eyes. When Dad died, and you still wouldn't sell it, even though I needed money, even though I begged, I got so angry. I thought, this house is more important to her than I am, so I decided if I couldn't have your love, I'd take what the house represented. The security, the value, the inheritance. Eleanor was crying now too. Caroline, I always loved you. The house was never more important than you. I know that now, but I couldn't see it then. All I could see was that you had millions of dollars in real estate and I was struggling to pay rent. And I felt entitled to it, like you owed it to me for being your daughter. I gave you so much over the years. You did, and I never appreciated it. I just kept wanting more. Therapy has helped me see that I had this toxic relationship with money and with you. Every time you gave me money, it reinforced this idea that your role was to provide for me financially. And when you stopped, I felt betrayed, like you'd broken some kind of contract. She looked at me. Mr. Reeves, I owe you an apology too. You were protecting my mother, which was your job, and I vilified you for it. I accused you of terrible things. I'm sorry. I nodded. I appreciate that. Caroline turned back to Eleanor. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I did, how much I hurt you. And I'm working on becoming a better person, someone you could be proud of. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. What are you doing now? How are you living? I'm working as a restaurant manager. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. I had to give up my expensive apartment. I live in a small place in Queens now. I'm paying back my debts. I'm living within my means for the first time in my life. And you know what? I'm happier than I was when I was trying to keep up appearances. They talked for over an hour about Caroline's therapy, about Eleanor's life and her friends, about memories from when Caroline was young, about possibilities for the future. At the end, Eleanor said, I'd like to see you again, if you'd like that. I'd like that very much. But Caroline, I need you to understand the house isn't yours. It never will be. I'm leaving it to your children when I die. You'll inherit some money and personal things, but not the house. Can you accept that? Caroline nodded. I can. I don't deserve the house, I know that. And honestly, I don't want it anymore. I want a relationship with you that's worth more than any house. As we left the restaurant, Eleanor looked lighter somehow. Thank you for coming with me, she said. How are you feeling? Hopeful. Cautiously hopeful. I know it'll take time to rebuild trust, but I want to try. Over the next year, Caroline and Eleanor rebuilt their relationship slowly. Caroline visited once every few months, always with advance notice, always in public places at first. The probation officer supervised for the first 6 months, then allowed unsupervised contact when it became clear Caroline was adhering to all the rules. Caroline never asked for money, never mentioned the house. She brought photos of Eleanor's grandchildren. She shared stories about her job. She seemed genuinely interested in her mother's life. Eleanor started to relax around her, started to believe the change might be real. I watched this reconciliation with mixed feelings. I was happy for Eleanor. She'd gotten her daughter back, or a version of her daughter. But I was also cautious. I'd seen too many cases where reconciliation led to renewed exploitation. So I made sure the legal protections remained firmly in place. The trust was ironclad. Eleanor's will was clear. The restraining order technically remained in effect, modified to allow supervised contact. If Caroline reverted to her old behavior, all the protections would slam back into place immediately. One afternoon, about 18 months after the first reconciliation meeting, Eleanor called me. "David, I want to make a change to my will." I felt my guard go up. "What kind of change?" "I want to leave Caroline a bit more money. Not the house, that still goes to the grandchildren. But I want to increase her cash bequest from $50,000 to $200,000. "Why?" "Because she's worked hard to change. She's been respectful. She hasn't asked me for anything. I want to acknowledge that. I want her to know that I appreciate her efforts." "Mrs. Hayes, I'm going to be blunt. Are you sure this is what you want? Or are you feeling pressured?" "I'm not being pressured. Caroline doesn't even know I'm considering this. This is my decision." "Okay, but I want to suggest something. Instead of changing the will now, what if we wait another year? If Caroline continues on this path, we'll make the change then. But if something happens, if she reverts, we won't have to undo it." Eleanor thought about this. "That's wise. Okay, let's wait." We waited. Another year passed. Caroline continued to be respectful and appropriate. She got a promotion at work. She paid off most of her debts. She started dating someone, a stable man with a steady job. She seemed genuinely happy. Eleanor decided to make the change to her will. We increased Caroline's bequest to $200,000. "I want her to know I'm proud of the work she's done," Eleanor explained. I drafted the new will. Eleanor signed it. But I made sure the house still went to the grandchildren through the trust. That protection remained absolute. Now, 3 years after the criminal trial, the situation is stable. Caroline visits her mother regularly. They have a cordial, if not deeply close, relationship. Eleanor is 85 and in good health. She still lives in her beach house, still paints, still gardens. The trust remains in place. The house is protected. And if anything happens to Eleanor, the house will pass to her grandchildren, not to Caroline. Caroline seems to have accepted this. She's told Eleanor multiple times that she doesn't expect to inherit the house, that she understands why it's going to her children, that she's grateful just to have a relationship with her mother again. I want to believe it's real. I want to believe Caroline genuinely changed. But I also keep the file on my desk. All the documentation of what she tried to do, the attempted fraud, the lies, the harassment, the break-in attempt. Because people can change, but they can also relapse. And my job is to protect Eleanor, no matter what. This case taught me several important lessons that I now share with every elder law client. First, proactive planning is essential. The trust we created 5 years before Caroline's attempted exploitation was what saved Eleanor's house. If we'd waited until the crisis hit, it would have been too late. Second, trusts are more protective than wills. Wills can be challenged after death. Trusts, especially irrevocable ones, are much harder to attack. The trust protected Eleanor's house in a way that simple ownership never could have. Third, family dynamics are complicated. Caroline wasn't a villain in a simple story. She was a troubled daughter who made terrible choices driven by financial desperation and psychological issues. Understanding that doesn't excuse her behavior, but it does help explain it. Fourth, reconciliation is possible, but must be approached carefully. Eleanor wanted her daughter back. That's natural and understandable. But the reconciliation had to happen with strong legal protections still in place. Trust, but verify. Hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Fifth, documentation is crucial. We kept detailed records of everything Caroline did. That documentation was essential when we needed to get restraining orders and when criminal charges were filed. Without it, Caroline might have been able to continue her harassment indefinitely. And finally, elder law isn't just about documents. It's about protecting people's autonomy, security, and dignity. Eleanor had the right to live in her home, the right to make her own decisions, the right to be free from exploitation by her own daughter. My job was to protect those rights. I think about Thomas Hayes sometimes, Eleanor's late husband, the man who foresaw all of this and asked me to protect his wife. He knew his daughter. He knew her weaknesses. And he made sure Eleanor would be protected long after he was gone. That's real love. That's planning for the future. That's taking care of someone even beyond death. The trust he asked me to create saved Eleanor's home and possibly her life. Without it, she might have ended up homeless, her most precious possession sold out from under her, her family history erased. Instead, she's living peacefully in the home she loves, protected, secure, autonomous. That's what elder law is supposed to accomplish. I still practice in Florida. I still specialize in elder law and estate planning. And I tell Eleanor's story, with her permission, to every client who comes to me worried about their adult children. Because this pattern is more common than people realize. Adult children pressuring elderly parents to sell homes or give them money. Adult children filing for guardianship or conservatorship to take control. Adult children exploiting power of attorney or manipulating confused parents. It's an epidemic, and it's devastating. But it can be prevented with proper planning, with trusts and protections put in place before the crisis hits, with careful selection of trustees and agents, with documentation and boundaries. Eleanor Hayes's beach house was saved because we planned ahead, because Thomas understood the danger, because we created layers of protection that Caroline couldn't penetrate no matter how hard she tried. And now that house will pass to Eleanor's grandchildren when she dies. They'll inherit not just a valuable piece of property, but a family legacy, a piece of history, a place filled with memories and meaning. That's worth fighting for. That's worth all the legal battles and stress and conflict. Because in the end, it's not really about the house. It's about protecting an elderly woman's right to live in her home, to age with dignity, to make her own choices, to be free from exploitation. That's justice. That's what I fight for every day. 5 years after Caroline's attempt at exploitation began, I received a call that I'd been dreading. It was from Eleanor's neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez. "Mr. Reeves, I'm calling about Eleanor. The ambulance just took her to the hospital. She fell in her garden and couldn't get up. I found her about 20 minutes ago. I was in my car within minutes, driving to Key West Regional Medical Center. When I arrived, I found Eleanor in the emergency room. She'd broken her hip. The doctor said she'd need surgery and then extensive rehabilitation. I'm 85 years old, Eleanor said from her hospital bed. Broken hips at my age are serious. You're going to be fine, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. David, I need you to be realistic with me. I might not recover from this, and even if I do, I can't live alone anymore. I need to face that. Over the next few days, Eleanor had surgery to repair her hip. The procedure went well, but the recovery was difficult. She needed round-the-clock care, physical therapy, and assistance with basic daily tasks. The hospital social worker approached me since I was listed as Eleanor's attorney and emergency contact. Mrs. Hayes will need to go to a rehabilitation facility for at least 6 weeks. After that, she'll need to make decisions about her long-term living situation. She may not be able to return home alone. I called William in California. He flew out immediately. We also, carefully, contacted Caroline. She was still on probation, but the restraining order had been modified to allow her to visit her mother in medical emergencies. Caroline arrived at the hospital the next day. When she walked into Eleanor's room, I watched her face carefully. I was looking for any sign of the old Caroline, the calculating one, the one who saw her mother's vulnerability as an opportunity. What I saw instead was genuine concern and fear. Mom, I'm so sorry. How are you feeling? They talked for about an hour. Caroline was gentle and attentive. She didn't mention the house. She didn't mention money. She just focused on her mother's health and comfort. After she left, Eleanor looked at me. She's really changed, hasn't she? It seems that way, but we still need to be careful. Eleanor went to a rehabilitation center for 7 weeks. The therapy was grueling. She made progress, but slowly. It became clear that she couldn't return to living alone in the beach house. We had to consider other options. William, Caroline, and I met at my office to discuss the situation. Mom needs assisted living, Caroline said. Somewhere with medical staff on site. Somewhere safe. I was surprised by her reasonableness. The old Caroline would have immediately suggested selling the house to pay for care. What about the beach house? William asked, watching Caroline's reaction. Caroline took a deep breath. The house stays in the trust. That hasn't changed. But we need to figure out how to pay for Mom's care. Does she have enough liquid assets? We reviewed Eleanor's finances. She had about $400,000 in savings and investments. Her Social Security and pension covered basic expenses. But high-quality assisted living would cost around $6,000 per month. She has enough for about 5 years, I calculated. Maybe longer, depending on market returns and if we're conservative with spending. And after that? William asked. After that, we'd need to consider other options, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We found an excellent assisted living facility about 20 minutes from the beach house. Eleanor toured it after she finished rehab and decided she liked it. It's not home, she said, but it's nice, and I'll be safe. She moved in on a Tuesday in October. Caroline helped with the move, packing up clothes and personal items from the beach house. I watched her carefully, but she never tried to take anything that wasn't explicitly for Eleanor's use. The beach house sat empty. William and I, as trustees, discussed what to do with it. We could rent it out, William suggested, use the income to help pay for Eleanor's care. Or we could leave it empty and just maintain it until Eleanor passes, I said. Then it goes to the grandchildren. That seems wasteful. Eleanor would want the house to be useful. We presented both options to Eleanor. Rent it, she said without hesitation. If it can help pay for my care and preserve my savings for my grandchildren, that's what I want. Just make sure whoever rents it takes good care of it. We rented the beach house to a retired couple from Boston for $4,000 per month. They loved the place and treated it like their own. They sent Eleanor photos of the sunsets and kept the garden blooming. Eleanor settled into assisted living. She made friends. She joined the painting class. She participated in the book club. She seemed content, though I knew she missed her home. Caroline visited once a month. She'd drive down from Miami, where she'd relocated for a better job opportunity. She'd take Eleanor out for lunch, or they'd sit in the facility's garden and talk. I stayed in touch, visiting every few weeks. Eleanor and I would have coffee in the facility's cafe and talk about everything from politics to her grandchildren to old cases I was working on. You know, she said one day, I never thanked you properly for everything you did. You saved my home. You protected me. You made it possible for me to live my last years with dignity. You don't need to thank me. It's my job. It's more than a job to you, I can tell. You actually care. She was right. I did care. This wasn't just business to me. It never had been. 2 years after Eleanor moved into assisted living, Caroline called me with unexpected news. David, I need to talk to you about something. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop in Key West. I've been offered a really good job, Caroline said, in California, near Uncle Will. The pay is almost double what I'm making now, but it means I'd be across the country from Mom. How do you feel about that? Conflicted. I've worked so hard to rebuild our relationship, but this is a huge opportunity for me. Financially, it would stabilize my life completely. I could finally feel secure. Have you talked to your mother about it? Not yet. I wanted to get your perspective first. Do you think she'd be okay with it? I thought about this carefully. I think Eleanor wants you to be happy and successful. I think she'd understand. And with video calls and visits a few times a year, you can maintain the relationship. Caroline nodded slowly. There's something else. I've been thinking about the will, about the $200,000 Mom is leaving me. I want to ask her to put that money in trust for my kids instead, for their education. I was stunned. You don't want the inheritance? I want to earn my own money. I want to build my own financial security. I don't want to sit around waiting for my mother to die so I can get money. That's what got me into trouble before. I want to break that pattern. This was a level of self-awareness I never expected from Caroline. That's very mature of you. It's taken a lot of therapy to get here, but I mean it. My kids should benefit from Grandma's generosity. I should provide for myself. She took the job in California. She had an honest conversation with Eleanor about it. Eleanor cried but supported the decision. You need to live your life, Eleanor told her. I'm proud of you for taking this opportunity. Caroline visited every few months. She video called weekly. The relationship continued, adapted to the distance. 3 years after Eleanor moved into assisted living, I noticed she was declining. She was 88 now. She moved more slowly. She seemed more tired. But her mind was still sharp. David, she said during one of my visits, I want to make sure everything is in order. I don't think I have much time left. Don't talk like that. I'm not being morbid. I'm being practical. I've had a good life, a long life. I'm ready. We reviewed everything. The trust was solid. The will was current. The beach house rental was generating income that had preserved most of her savings. Her grandchildren were named as ultimate beneficiaries of everything. What about Caroline? I asked. Have you thought any more about what you want to leave her? I'm leaving her what we discussed. $200,000 in trust for her children's education. She doesn't know it yet, but I'm also leaving her all my jewelry and personal items. Things that have meaning, not just monetary value. She'll appreciate that. I hope so. David, I need to tell you something. I forgave Caroline, completely, for everything she did. It took me a long time, but I let go of the anger and hurt. That's remarkable. It freed me. Holding on to it was like drinking poison and expecting her to die. She's changed. She's genuinely changed. And I got to have a relationship with my daughter again before I died. That's worth more than the house ever was. 6 months later, Eleanor died peacefully in her sleep. She was 88 years old. The funeral was small but beautiful. It was held on the beach near her house, which the renters graciously allowed. About 50 people attended. Friends from the assisted living facility, neighbors from her years at the beach house, her brother William, her 3 grandchildren, now adults themselves, and Caroline. Caroline spoke at the service. She talked about her mother's strength, her grace, her capacity for forgiveness. She publicly acknowledged the ways she'd failed her mother and the ways her mother had given her a second chance. My mother taught me that it's never too late to change, Caroline said. That love isn't about money or possessions. That home is more than a building. She left me a legacy far more valuable than any inheritance. She left me the example of how to live with dignity and grace. There wasn't a dry eye on that beach. After the funeral, we gathered at my office for the reading of the will. It was William, Caroline, and Eleanor's 3 grandchildren. I read through the bequests. The jewelry and personal items to Caroline, the $200,000 in trust for Caroline's children's education, and the beach house, along with the remainder of the estate, to be divided equally among the 3 grandchildren. The house was now worth approximately $4.2 million. Between the 3 grandchildren, each would inherit about $1.4 million plus other assets. Caroline showed no disappointment at all. She hugged her children and congratulated them on their inheritance. Grandma wanted you to have this, she told them. She wanted you to have the security and opportunities she worked so hard to preserve. I want that for you too. One of the grandchildren, Eleanor's namesake, was in medical school. I want to keep the house, she said. I know that's complicated with 3 owners, but I'd like to try. It's our family legacy. The other 2 grandchildren agreed. They worked out an arrangement where Eleanor the younger would buy out her siblings' shares over time. or they'd maintain joint ownership and share use of the property. The trust was dissolved. The house was transferred to the grandchildren. William and I completed our duties as trustees. As I was packing up the files, Caroline came to my office one last time. "David, I owe you an apology, a real one. Not just for what I did to Mom, but for what I tried to do to you. I accused you of terrible things. I tried to portray you as manipulating an elderly woman. But the truth is, you were the only one protecting her. If you hadn't been there, I might have succeeded in taking her home, and she would have lost everything. I appreciate you saying that. I was so caught up in my own financial problems that I couldn't see what I was doing. I was willing to make my mother homeless to solve my money issues. That's horrifying to me now. People can change, Caroline. You proved that. Do you believe it? Really? Or do you still see me as the person who tried to steal from her own mother? I thought about this carefully. I see you as someone who made terrible mistakes and then did the hard work to change. That doesn't erase what you did, but it does show character to face it and grow from it. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." She stood to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. My oldest daughter, the one who got the house, she's thinking about becoming an elder law attorney. She was inspired by what you did for her grandmother. She wants to help protect other elderly people." I felt a lump in my throat. I'd be happy to talk to her about the field if she's interested. She'd like that. That was a year ago. Eleanor's granddaughter did indeed go to law school. She's now a second-year student and she interns at my firm during summers. The beach house is still in the family. Young Eleanor lives there part of the year while she's in school nearby. She sends me photos sometimes. She's restored the garden to exactly how her grandmother kept it. She's even framed some of Eleanor's watercolor paintings and hung them on the walls. The legacy continues. I still practice elder law in Florida. I still tell Eleanor's story to new clients, with the family's permission. It's a perfect example of why proactive planning matters, why trusts protect assets better than simple ownership, why documentation is crucial, why even family members can be threats. But it's also an example of something else, of forgiveness, of second chances, of the complexity of human nature, of the possibility of redemption. Caroline turned her life around. She's thriving in California, she's financially stable, she has a good relationship with her children, and she got to reconcile with her mother before Eleanor died. That's not how these cases usually end. Usually, there's permanent estrangement. Usually, the elderly parent dies still angry and hurt. Usually, the exploitative child never changes. But sometimes, with accountability and consequences and genuine remorse, change is possible. I don't know if I ever fully trusted Caroline. Even after years of good behavior, I maintained the legal protections. I kept the documentation. I watched carefully. But Eleanor trusted her. And maybe that's enough. The Beach House case taught me that elder law isn't just about protecting assets. It's about protecting dignity, autonomy, and the right of elderly people to make their own choices. It's about preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. It's about creating structures that protect people even from their own children, when necessary. But it also taught me about the capacity for human growth, about the possibility of reconciliation, about the power of forgiveness. Eleanor Hayes lived to see her daughter become a better person. She died knowing her grandchildren would inherit her beloved home. She died with her dignity intact and her assets protected. That's a successful case. That's justice. And every time I drive past that beach house, I think of Eleanor, of her strength, of her grace, of her wisdom in planning ahead, of her capacity to forgive without forgetting. The house stands there on the beach, weathered blue paint catching the sunlight, garden blooming, waves lapping at the shore, filled with memories. protected, safe. Home to a new generation of the Hayes family. That's Eleanor's legacy. And I'm proud to have been a small part of preserving it. If you're listening to this story and you see yourself in it, either as someone trying to protect an elderly parent or as an elderly person who needs protection, here's what I want you to know. It's not too late to plan. It's not paranoid to protect yourself. It's not mean to set boundaries with adult children. It's not greedy to want to keep your home and your assets during your lifetime. You have the right to age with dignity. You have the right to make your own choices. You have the right to be protected from exploitation, even from family members. Seek out an elder law attorney in your state. Talk about trusts, estate planning, powers of attorney, and protective strategies. Document everything. Build protective structures before a crisis hits. And if you're an adult child, examine your motives honestly. Are you genuinely concerned about your parents' well-being? Or are you focused on your potential inheritance? There's a difference, and it matters. Your parents don't owe you their assets while they're alive. They've earned the right to use their money and property however they choose. Your inheritance is a gift, not an entitlement. If you find yourself pressuring an elderly parent to sell their home or give you money, stop. Get help. Talk to a therapist. Figure out why you feel entitled to what isn't yours. And if you've already done something like what Caroline did, it's not too late to change, to apologize, to do the work to become better. Caroline proved that redemption is possible. But change requires genuine remorse, professional help, accountability, and time. Lots of time. Don't expect quick forgiveness. Earn it slowly. To my fellow elder law attorneys, keep fighting, keep protecting, keep documenting. This epidemic of elder financial abuse isn't going away, but we can make a difference, one client at a time. To Eleanor Hayes, wherever you are, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for showing me that strength and forgiveness can coexist. And to everyone listening, protect yourself. Plan ahead. Age with dignity. That's what Eleanor would want me to tell you. That's her final legacy. If you found this story valuable, please subscribe to our channel for more true legal stories and elder law education. Share this with anyone who might benefit from Eleanor's story. And remember, it's never too early to plan, and it's never too late to protect yourself. Thank you for listening.